Hello and welcome to Eye Openers. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Tom, for joining me today. How are you?
Very good. Very good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Well, I'm great because, of course, you guys know I love my eye-opening beverages. And for me today, it is just your basic coffee. Well, Tom, you're from Santa Barbara, so you know Handlebar coffee roasters, right?
I've heard of them. I'm not a coffee guy, but I hear a lot about this. And my wife
Well,
is a coffee person, so I hear it
let's
from
get her
her.
on here. We can chat with
Yeah.
her about coffee. I love those guys over there. It's fun to, buy from somebody local. And so that's what I'm drinking today. But I am drinking it from my special Hawaii mug.
Ah,
So
so it should have Kona coffee or something in there.
I know, maybe I should. Maybe I should. But this is one of my favorite places in the world, Kailua, Lanikai, and Oahu. And it definitely makes me nostalgic. But that's me. What are you drinking today, Tom?
Well, I have I don't know if you can see this, but I guess it's
Oh,
my
yeah.
green latte.
Your
So
green latte.
your green latte. So it's a really interesting, I make it every day. Green drink that has all kinds of lettuce, celery, spinach, garlic, kale, avocado, a few other things. Throw it all in the blender, and it's like, basically your superfood for the day. So and it actually tastes really good too. So that's my coffee.
Nice. Okay, I love it. Friend Kobus is joining us. He's saying he's drinking coffee with me as well. But I love that kind of vitality in the glass there that you have. Is that your own recipe that you use, or you just kind of go off of what's in the
No,
fridge?
it was a bit of our own recipe. So long story, but like when COVID hit, I had prior to COVID, I'd been traveling a lot and eating out and gaining a lot of weight, doing things, that eating and drinking too much that you shouldn't be drinking. And, my wife and I said, okay, we're going to be locked at home. How do we, lose some weight and get more healthy? And so we were trying to come up with like high nutrition type of things that we could make ourselves. You can buy a lot of stuff that you can do. And so we just kind of kept trying and doing different things. And, some of the ones we did in the beginning were horrible. Um, and the one secret we actually found with this one is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a pretty good consistency, right? It's not
Yeah.
like super loose. The key to that is the avocado. So you take a half an avocado, drop it in there, and it really makes it like I won't go so far as a shake, but kind of a consistency that is a little bit thicker than just like a traditional. If you put a bunch of lettuce and celery in a blender, what would happen? So
Right,
um,
that would be a bit more watery, but then sometimes I know when I make mine, I don't use a juicer, I use a blender, and so sometimes it's
yep,
too chunky, but it sounds the avocado, I know from experience as well, makes it creamier and like a smoother
yep,
consistency. That's
yep. And we got this super good blender, the Vitamix one that basically is like a jet, and everything kind of really, really chops up really well, and all of that. So yeah, there's a lot of really good nutrition in there, and that way, if I miss my vegetables at a meal, I don't feel bad.
Do you find that like it shifts your ability to focus? Like I know for me so I like to put ginger in mine. I'm curious to hear about your
Ginger's in this actually. That's
yeah.
great. Yes, I have some ginger
That
in here
that
too.
really helps me like, okay, I'm on like when I have something like that.
Yeah, I actually drink some of this usually around this time, and then again in the middle of
Mhm.
the afternoon.
Uh-huh.
I guess some people drink sodas or Dr. Peppers or coffee or whatever, but this is sort of my pick me up, along
Yeah,
the way. And it's
for
got
sure.
garlic in it and stuff like that. So it has a good flavor.
Yeah, and anti-inflammatory. I definitely have to try the garlic. I have to say I've never done that before, so I'm a little bit I'm curious now.
Got lemon, garlic. I'll send you the recipe.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Maybe we can post it too in the show
Yeah,
notes for
there we go.
people. Okay, well, let's give you a formal introduction here because people are like, well, who's this guy, Tom? And why should I be tuning in? And why should I
He's a
care?
health food guy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, no. We are very much about the business and leadership insights here. People are here to, hear some of your wisdom, gain some of those nuggets. So, Tom has over 30 years of experience helping forward-thinking businesses develop and implement innovative technology-based strategies and solutions to drive sales and predictable revenue growth. So that was kind of like a big mouthful, but I'm going to let you talk more about that in a second. Give us some clarity on what exactly it is that you do. But right now, you're an investor and co-founder in LeadSmart Technologies, which has developed an innovative and unique CRM and collaboration platform that enables businesses to visualize what is taking place with their prospects and customers, and proactively assist these prospects and customers to reach the revenue zone. Now, the revenue zone, that sounds familiar to me because that is the name of your new book, right?
It is. Yes. Yes. I don't know if you can see that here, but there it
Oh, yeah.
is.
There, for those
Yeah.
of you watching
Yeah.
live stream with video, you can see his book right there. So, give us a bit of maybe some brief milestone breakdowns about your experience to date, and help us, just understand that mouthful I just read
Yeah.
about your
Yeah.
experience.
So I have kind of a weird background. So I'm, as you mentioned, I'm in Santa Barbara. I went to school in Santa Barbara, and I graduated with a degree in computer science. So I'm an engineer and a geek by training.
Well, we welcome
And
that here, and we don't call
yeah,
that, we just call that unique.
that's unique. And when I left school, I'm going to date myself. I left school in the late '80s, and I got a job at a startup, a software startup, which was really rare at that time. Like they didn't
Mhm.
exist, and here in Santa Barbara. So
Right.
I was, I think, the fourth employee. It was a really early startup. It was founded by what professor at UCSB, um,
That's cool.
and I ended up spending 10 years there. And when we sold the company, there were over 400 employees, I believe. And as I tell everybody, it was my on the ground MBA program, because everything that could happen did happen over those 10 years that, in business. But during that time, I shifted pretty quickly from being an engineer, which is where I started in the company, to the business side and the sales and the marketing and the operations side of the business. And kind
Mhm.
of a funny story on that is that I was building one of our products and I was an engineer, and I was complaining that our salespeople weren't selling enough of it. It's like real easy for me to say, right?
Right.
And then after a while, I was like, okay, I'm going to go do this myself.
Mm.
And so I found a way to kind of get myself out of engineering and into the sales and marketing side. And then I learned pretty quickly that it wasn't quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. Um, you know,
Not so smug anymore, huh?
yeah, the grass wasn't quite as green on that other side of the fence over there. But since then, I've been in running businesses and more in the sales, marketing, and operation side of the business the rest of my career. Even though I
Mhm.
stay kind of fluent with technology, I'm not an engineer per se from a profession perspective. So exited that software company, did consulting for a number of years, created another software company that I sold to Intuit a few years ago. I ended up
Nice.
getting into digital marketing because I really loved the whole concept of being able to measure and engineer marketing a bit, which was
Mm.
always a problem. I just never liked the idea of, hey, let's go spend $30,000 on an ad in a magazine and cross our fingers and hope that something comes out of it, which is what we did back in the day. So, yeah. And so then in the last,
You
kind of,
wanted to be able to pull out some more objective results and
yeah,
either like reinforce that this was a good decision, this was a good investment, or it wasn't, and be able to have companies make smarter marketing decisions for themselves.
yeah. I mean, you're right. As an engineer in particular, right, you want to be able to measure your results.
Yeah.
So if you do something, what impact or what result are you getting from that impact, and not having it be, kind of nebulous. Um, what is the saying is that, you don't know where 50% of your marketing dollars are wasted. You just don't know which 50%, that kind of stuff. It's like that never did well with me. So, when the company I had got acquired by Intuit, I went and worked for Intuit for a period of time, and they were just getting started with their whole digital marketing strategy. And so I got a lot of really interesting exposure that I wouldn't have normally got. I just got enamored with it, really is what it boiled down to. So I was part of an agency for a few years. Then I kind of
Mhm.
got the software bug again, with LeadSmart, the, um, and the book really came about from just kind of not a culmination of a lot of that, but more importantly, recently in the last couple of years, really seeing a shift in just the whole process of how buyers want to buy. And,
Mhm.
the fact that we have the ability as buyers to, have so much information, and we don't generally want to deal with a salesperson if we don't have to. You have a lot of shift towards more millennials and younger buyers that don't have the tolerance for maybe sales that some of us older people have had and things like that. So a lot of the book came together from my experience and kind of what I learned. I found that I had to change the way I was doing things. And I figured if I had to change, others had to change. And so that's where the book ultimately came from. So that's the quick snapshot.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. So right now you're working on the CRM company, and then the book came from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And that is really looking at what is the right way to, or the more modern way to look at sales. So changing your mindset around
Yeah.
what works in sales
Yes.
today. Very cool.
Yeah, I call the book, the subtitle is The Ultimate Playbook for the Next Generation of B2B Sales, Marketing, and Predictable Revenue Growth. So it's really, okay, how do we sell and market as we go forward to be successful versus relying on what we've done in the past, because what we've done in the past is clearly not going to work and is not working as we go forward.
Right. I was literally just on the phone with somebody for the last 90 minutes, and we were talking about changes in their pipeline, even though they've been doing the same thing. And it's like, well, maybe it's not you guys, maybe the trend is shifting, right? Like
Yeah.
what is working is changing, and
Yes.
we need to get in front of that.
Yeah, and we could have a whole separate conversation on this, but just this whole idea of, what people think of as leads, and in the B2B world, you have, marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, and all of that stuff I think is the past. And you just have to really look at how you're going to really help your prospect, create demand for what you sell and build trust. And how do you do that in a self-serve way where the buyer and the prospect wants to be in control of their own journey? And that in a nutshell is what I, talk a lot about how to actually do in the book.
Awesome. What is one nugget about that you could share with us? Because I encounter this all the time in the organizations and leaders that I work with. How do you shift them? How do you change the way we should think about demand or lead generation?
Well, it's and again, there's a mindset shift, right? So I call it the old school mindset is, hey, you get a lead, right? And as quickly as possible, you get that lead on the phone with a salesperson, so that salesperson can ideally control the journey that lead is going down, right? And a lot of companies still operate that way. It's like, okay, I mean, I get tons of phone calls or even emails that literally are cold emails like, hey, I saw your website. Can we jump on a phone call?
Or LinkedIn messages.
Yeah, or LinkedIn message, right? Or an email or whatever.
Yeah.
So really, that's kind of the old school mindset. So the revenue zone mindset, as I talk about, is first of all, you kind of have to understand that you have to respect the fact that the buyer wants to be in control of their own journey. You have to respect the fact that the buyer or the prospect wants to remain anonymous. So they don't want to have to talk to a salesperson unless they really need to, or want to, rather, maybe more than anything else. And then you have to respect the fact that when they do reach out to talk to a salesperson, they expect that person to be more of a consultant or a guide or an advisor rather than a salesperson along the way. So you say, well, gosh, how do you do that, right? How do you actually create predictable revenue? How do you grow a business when you're not in control of the sales cycle and you're not, all of that? And that's what I go into in the book is you basically have the revenue zone. So I'll back up. The revenue zone, basically, as I define it, it's a place where the prospect is at a point where they're seriously considering doing business with you. Well, for them to ascend to that level, you have to build demand and build trust. How do you do that in a self-serve world? You have to kind of define that yellow brick road that you want them to go down. And that's what I go through in the book is how do you define that yellow brick road that you guide that prospect down digitally?
Right.
And then how do you track that and know that they're following the road and they haven't fallen off the road and
Right.
all of
So
that.
creating their own yellow brick road.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
result you're looking for. Very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of like is a set of bumper lanes, right? Like keeping the prospect kind of going forward. Very cool. Okay. Well, you guys.
Even if you look at a lot of websites can be very dispersing and send the prospect off. And think about your website as how do you make that guide the prospect versus just give them information that forces them to go somewhere else. So the guardrails, like you said, is a really good analogy.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're gonna, put links up for people to, find your book and find out more about that. But when people tune in to this show, they are looking to hear from people who are excellent at what they do, who have had success, but also some failings along the way. And they want to hear those stories about your business, about what's behind the scenes there that's helped get you to where you're at today and where you're trying to go tomorrow. And the question I love to kick off with is a big one, but it really helps set the stage for this conversation. So if you and I were to speak 3 years from now and you pick up the phone, oh, Brittany, it's so great to hear from you. I am so excited to tell you about what that you've accomplished in the last 3 years. So let's fast forward, pretend this is 2025.
Okay. And it's about my business, not about, my green drink or my golf game.
Well,
So,
a little bit of both, just so you
okay,
can sprinkle those in. But yes, mostly we want to hear about
yeah.
what big thing are you working on now to create 3 years from now?
So I really am passionate about just what we just talked about is how do we really change the mindset and the way that B2B sales and marketing is done.
Mm.
I think that we have in the last 10 to 15 years have gone through a mindset of what's, if you're, like the SDR and you have the SDR and or the sales development rep or the business development rep. And I mean, especially in the tech industry, right? We've
Mhm.
kind of gone through a very specific process. I
Mhm.
really would love to be the one helping to lead that shift to the new way of doing things. And I think as a result of doing that, right now you tend to have a lot of a bit of a rift or a chasm between the prospect and the sales and the marketing organization. It's a bit of a
Mhm.
cat and
Mhm.
mouse game, right? I
Yes.
would love to see that rift in that cat and mouse game go away and to see that, hey, we're just working together to accomplish something. I mean, a lot of companies, right? Most companies have a really good product and a really valuable thing or whatever they're selling, right? That is being offered to their customers. But in a lot of cases, they don't even get a chance to spotlight it because of what I just talked about. The sales process and the marketing process gets in their way and gets in
Mhm.
the way of the customer. And so, we want to see the economy pick up. We want to see everything grow. Well, one way to do that is to help people buy more and be more successful selling what you have through just changing that shift. So if we were talking in 3 years, I would love to be able to say that shift has actually occurred.
Mhm. Okay, how are you guys measuring that shift? I'm just curious. Of course, you're
Well,
about measurement. So, what would you objectively say that shift has been made? The
well,
structure of the process?
yeah, I think you would see, again, instead of the back to the emails, right, where it's or the InMail, the LinkedIn that says, "Hey, can we jump on a 15-minute phone call?" Is and it's okay to do outreach. I'm not against outreach. Don't get me wrong, but there's even ways of doing that differently. Where rather than saying, "Hey, can you jump on a 15-minute phone call?" Hey, I understand that you might have this problem. Let me start you with some very good information that will start to lead you down step one, step two, step three. So you're
Mhm.
starting to see, I mean, these are just simple little examples, but um,
Right.
I want to see, and again, if I look at with LeadSmart, we work with a lot of sales and marketing organizations. I want to see the conversion rate, leads conversion rates are not good, right? In the traditional way. I mean, maybe like a lot of the clients we work with, if they're converting 2 to 3% of their leads, that's really, really good. I think
Mhm.
that the lead conversion rate can go way up by changing what I just talked about. So measuring that by seeing how many more people enter into my quote unquote pipeline, but
Right.
it's really how do I enable them to actually become a customer at a much higher rate than what we're doing right now. So,
Right. Right. Very cool. So what are the skills or strategy you're using right now that maybe you've acquired along the way? What are the key things that you pull on in your work today?
oh boy. Um, I think, I mean, for me personally, I pull on because I have a weird breadth of knowledge, or, of experience, from engineering to sales and marketing. I even did finance for a bit. So I actually even know my way around, a P&L and a balance sheet and
Mhm.
things like that. So I have kind of a weird and broad breadth of experience in a lot of different areas.
Mhm.
And I try and draw on that a lot. And I do recommend, for somebody who's even getting started in business and is get involved in a lot of parts of the business, make sure
Mhm.
you understand you don't have to be super expert, but be fluent in all parts of the business. because it will really help you as you're trying to build a business or grow a business or even hire and recruit and find out, are you bringing on the right team members? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a worthwhile exercise, even though some of those areas you may not really care for.
Right, right. What a great point, that actually it's the fact that you've had that unique kind of experience and background, that you have jumped into these different areas of what it takes to run a business, that is probably helping you be really successful in that way. Right.
Yeah, and I think,
Firing it
you
out.
know, and hire right team is a big deal. That's having and building a team and knowing the right team and what are the right skills that you need to be, are you hiring the right people with the right skills and the right abilities? If you don't understand accounting, for example, or finance, how can you realistically recruit and hire somebody to run your finance the way that you really wanted to be running that business? You have to be able to
Right.
understand that. Or if you're going to hire an engineer, or you're going to hire a sales leader or a marketing leader, again, you don't have to be expert, but you need to be fluent, at least in what it is that job is, so you can help
Mm,
build the right team. And plus,
really
the
great.
team respects that too, right? The team respects it if you understand what you're asking them to do.
Completely, completely. What kind of breakthroughs have you had along the way, any part of your journey, that have changed the way that you lead or see your business? So what kind of like acute moment happened that gave you an insight, or you were like, oh my gosh, like I've been doing it over this way over here, but I need to totally shift. Tell us a story about that.
Yeah, so it kind of comes back to what we were just talking about. And I think if there was one downside of the first company I was with that I spent 10 years with, even though we were pretty large when we sold the company, it was still a very startup-ish, you know, um, you had the mentality, you try and do as many things as you can yourself.
Mhm.
And you take out the trash and clean the bathroom. And even though we had quite a lot of people, we still had a very startup-ish mentality.
Mhm.
And one thing I learned when I went to Intuit, obviously going into a much bigger organization, is the power of team
Mhm.
and how much you can really accomplish, not so much with a big team. And I think that's what was my big takeaway, is size was not the important thing, but it was the quality of the team and the dedication and the focus of that team towards a common goal or a common objective. And the team that I was working with at Intuit was amazing at that. And I really learned a lot from that. Is like, wow, it's like you don't even know what you can accomplish with a very, it doesn't, again, not big team, but a really good team that's
Mhm.
aligned towards that common goal and common purpose. So I always try and keep, there's two parts, right? Team, but there's also having that goal and purpose that everybody understands that they're going after. Otherwise, again, it can get diluted pretty quickly.
Right, right. What a great point, in regards to leadership, that presenting that common goal or purpose or whatever for people to align with and to engage with is so central to being successful with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I one big reason that I started this show is that, or this podcast, is that for over a decade now, I've been sitting with leaders and entrepreneurs and CEOs and hearing um, the ways in which they feel like they're failing, or things are holding them back, or they don't really, or the lack of clarity and where to go next. And I see so many people that were struggling kind of in isolation, when really there were such common themes in the way that they were experiencing these challenges. And I said, oh, this doesn't need to happen behind closed doors anymore. I want to blow this up and create a place for people to hear, hey, you're not alone when you're having these challenges right now. But I feel like there's so many places you can go and hear about the glory stories of being an entrepreneur. I feel like it's such like a sexy thing to start a business and call yourself an entrepreneur, but there are these real challenges that happen, and I couldn't find a place to direct people that were feeling this way. And so as a part of the show, we talk about, what would you identify as your biggest weakness as a leader, or the greatest challenge that you're experiencing right now? And I ask people to share that, in order to create this more comprehensive view of what it means to really be a business owner or a leader. So what does that look like for you? What would you consider as your weakness that you're working on right now, or the biggest challenge that your business is experiencing?
Yeah. So my biggest well, I have two weaknesses, so I'll share. You'll get a 2-for-1 special. Um, and this has been something I've done my career, and I constantly am working on, is I underestimate the effort. Right. I
Mhm.
look at something and I go, okay, we can get that done. You know, just, I mean, I do it at a day level, I do it at a week level, or even a month level, and you think, oh my gosh, I have a month. Look what I could get done in this next month, and then what I do is um, I tend to pedal too fast, right? I'll end up like, okay, I can work weekends and I can do this because I'm going to get it done, when I really improperly from the beginning estimated the effort of what it's going to take.
Mhm.
And so taking the time in the beginning to estimate, if you're going to create a business or you're trying to grow a business, okay, what is that really going to take? And don't sugarcoat it, because you're right. You hear so much out there like, oh, you just do this, and oh, you run a Facebook ad or something, and something
Yeah.
just magically happens, and you're getting, and you don't realize that anything you're doing right requires you to go through a process and a journey to get there, and it's
Mhm.
usually going to require more effort than you think, and you're going to probably have some headwinds or other things that you weren't necessarily aware of along the
Mhm.
way. So that's
Mhm.
been something I'm constantly looking at as a leader, because it can be really demoralizing when you do that with your team, right?
Right.
If you say, okay, and then oh, wait a minute, I thought, we got, and it's just, so you have to keep that balance for yourself and for your team,
Mhm.
that, but at the same time be aggressive, right? It's not that you don't want to be aggressive, it's just properly estimating. So
Right.
that's sort of
Right.
the first thing. um, the second weakness, kind of going back to what we were talking about, is I tend to try and take on too much myself, and again, not delegate enough to the team, right? You mentioned Neela, who works for me. It's like, she's been awesome because I've been able to delegate so much to her, and she's able to do so much as I delegate, and it frees up, and it gives you a lot more freedom as a business person to do some of the things you need to do. But if you're not able or willing to delegate it, it becomes almost like a trap. And then you combine that with underestimating the effort, and those two things together can really kill you. Um, and that's where you get a lot of burnout, right? You hear a lot of burnout in business and all of that kind of stuff, and startups. It's those two things, in my opinion. It's underestimating the effort and really not delegating and trying to do too much yourself and be the superhero. And I certainly am guilty of both of those in my career.
Well, thanks for being so willing to share that with us. The good news is you're not alone. So I'm a psychologist by training, and what we know is that actually we're inherently bad at trying to figure out how much time something will take. So our forecasts, our projections on what it will take to get something done, we just don't even seem to get better at either over time. And so we really need to allow our team a seat at the table, or a voice at least on the Zoom call, to give us that feedback about how things are going. What do they think? What is an intensity that will like drive performance but not burn people out, or not make them feel like they're always failing right at what you expect. That's a really tough balance.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system, or
Yeah.
EOS.
Yes. Love EOS.
We've adopted that. And I found that has really helped me force some of the things about estimating properly, and the issues that we're dealing with. And so I
Mhm.
think whether you use EOS or some other framework, I think frameworks really help that, and put it front and center, so you're not just, it's something that you're confronting and dealing with every day versus, just trying to react to.
Completely. That's a really great point. No matter what it is, having some type of
Right.
framework you can come back to, and also like plan with, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I see these are my 90-day rocks,
Yeah.
and after I complete those, here's what's next, right? So whatever language it is, whatever tool you use, just having something to help provide that structure as a place for you to always come back and either recalibrate or
Mhm.
figure out where you need to go next. Good point. Um, so we've talked about what has been successful, like what behaviors and skills and strategies you've collected along the way that have helped you with your business to date. But we also know that we have things about us that can also be present as challenges. So we talked about you're not the best at estimating time, but what is there a way that you maybe even think you show up as a bottleneck in your business? You said you sometimes take on too much, but is there anything that you're doing that helped you get to where you're at today, but might hold you back from the next step of your business?
Yeah, I think it's what we said earlier is, and I think that if you're fluent in a lot of things, right, you'll tend to want to put your fingers into a lot of things.
Mhm. Great point.
And um and what I've learned is, like, especially if going back to these are all sort of interrelated, going back to if something's not getting done as fast as I would like it, I'll
Mhm.
interject myself. Now, that can be very demoralizing for a team member and actually really make them way less effective. And you
Mhm.
feel like you're helping, right? You feel like you're going to
Oh,
jump in and you're going to help them and whatever, but what you're really doing is bypassing them. And when you bypass them, that just makes them less, in their world, right? That's not a good thing for what they're doing there. So
no, it makes
it's
people feel like they're not performing in a
that's
way that
right,
you're looking for. They
right,
disengage. They feel like, why am I here if you're just going to do
right,
this anyway?
right, right. It's like, well, what is my value if you're going to come in and do it anyway, or
Mhm.
or you're going to go, jump in when it's, let me go through the challenges
Right.
on all of those things. So it's like I've had to learn, and I'm not 100% perfect, and my wife reminds me of this from time to time, but is I have to learn to say, okay, how can I help them and coach them, but not go and try and bypass them and say, hey, here, let me show you how to do that, and go from there and empower them to do more rather than go around them on the
Mhm.
other side. And I think you know, I think that happens all the time with businesses and founders, and why businesses stay small in a lot of cases because the founder just feels like they have to get involved in all of that, and they don't let the team evolve from that. So
Completely. And if you have hired the right people and they're in the right seats, they
exactly,
should be able to
that's
probably do
right,
it even better than you could,
that's
right?
right.
That's the goal. And so instead of, cutting them off at the knees, what if instead we ask them, well, how could I support you? Like where do you need more resources or collaborations or, what do we need to do to help make you the most successful you can be? And so many times leaders aren't asking those questions. They're making assumptions. Maybe they know
Mhm.
what's best or whatever, but somebody who spends every single day in that role, if you are not getting feedback from them, if you're not, making them part of the decisions, especially that involve their department or whatever, you're missing a huge amount of information that could be really helpful.
Totally agree. And there's a lot of, if you're hiring the right people, they're bringing a lot that you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what skills and experience they're bringing to the table. So you want to pull that out of them rather than, assume something, um, and go from there. And going back to EOS, right? The accountability chart, I have found that to be useful by saying, okay, what are you accountable for? And then let's work together to achieve whatever that accountability is that you're accountable for, rather than, and I think that inherently sort of brings out what we just talked about.
Really great point. So thank you so much for sharing so many nuggets with us, being totally transparent, helping us, see where we can grow to. How can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they hear about or get the book? It's the best way.
Well, so the book is on Amazon, and the audiobook just came out as well. So we have
Oh,
a,
cool.
a written book and an audiobook. You
Did
can
you
also,
record it? Like, did you read it for the
no,
audience?
I didn't read it. I didn't read it. Neela talked me out of that.
I heard that process is pretty painful for people.
But we got a really, really good narrator. So I'm really,
Cool.
really pleased with the narrator. But and then you can also go to the revenuezone.com. There's a link to the Amazon there, but there's the unique part about the book. There's a bunch of resources, like we have tools and things like that you use throughout the book to accomplish a lot of this, and that's all on that revenuezone.com website. So quite a bit of resources and tools there. Um, Personally, if you want to connect, love to connect on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is T Burton 5350, or I
Cool.
think there's a few Tom Burtons, but if you find more than one, um, T Burton 5350 is the handle there.
I'm
And
sure they
then
can find you if they're not, seeing it. You guys can find it through me because we're doing the LinkedIn Live right now.
that's true. And
Mhm.
I'll make sure this is on there as well, so it'll be there that way. And then my software company, LeadSmart Technologies, which is leadsmarttech.com, and it dovetails really, with the software that we're building for that company, dovetail into this whole mindset that we're talking about, and really trying to change even the way people use CRM and how they go about managing the sales process and enabling them more rather than tracking them more, which has historically been
Mhm.
how CRM has been used. So all of this kind of all fits
Right.
together.
I love it. Wonderful. Well, Tom, I'm so grateful that you decided to come on and share
Yeah,
your
it's been great.
eye-opening insights with us. Super helpful. And thank you to you guys, the audience members, because without you, I would just be talking to an empty space and that would be kind of boring for everybody. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing how these insights have helped you guys along the way. I always love your feedback. So please share your stories with us, how this has been helpful. And we definitely share them in future episodes. So thanks again for joining us. Until next time, see you guys.